They called it the Silent Armada, though in its day it was anything but silent. 12,000 ships strong, bristling with the most advanced technology the Terran Union had ever conceived, it had set out from the orbit of Mars under banners of hope and triumph. The war against the Dominion had ended after a century of blood, and humanity, battered but unbroken, sought meaning beyond the ashes. The Perseus expedition was to be their redemption, an odyssey into the uncharted black beyond the Perseus Veil, where the sensors of even the oldest galactic races found only static and distortion. The mission was simple on paper: exploration, expansion, renewal. But for those who watched the fleet rise, trailing golden engines through the scarred skies of Sol, it was more than that. It was proof that mankind could never be extinguished. Admiral Corin Vale was at the heart of it, a man as revered as he was feared. The youngest admiral in Terran history, veteran of the Battle of Titan's Rings, he had carried humanity's flag through its darkest nights. The fleet's flagship, Eidolon Prime, was a technological marvel, part ship, part living construct, forged from the remnants of quantum reactive alloys salvaged from alien wrecks. It was said to think for itself, to respond to its crew like a loyal beast. Vale called it the soul of the Armada, and as it led the formation through the dark, every human heart in the galaxy beat alongside it. For 3 weeks, their transmissions came like hymns, reports of luminous nebula, strange readings near the veil, laughter, music, even messages from children aboard the colony ships. Then, one day, the transmissions stopped. No distress signal, no burst transmission, no flicker of a dying beacon. One moment they were there, 12,000 ships, 12 million souls, and the next, nothing. Every relay station at the galactic rim fell silent. The Dominion, still licking its wounds from the war, mocked the bold apes who dared to wander beyond their reach. The rest of the galaxy mourned for a moment, then forgot. Humanity, though wounded, could not afford to linger on ghosts. The centuries passed. The Perseus expedition became a legend, a story told in hushed tones, its truth buried beneath the dust of time. But not everyone forgot. Among the archives of the Terran Union, in the vaults of the Lunar Academy, a young girl named Reva Thorne spent her life chasing whispers. She had been born long after the Armada vanished, but to her, they were more than myth. They were destiny. While her peers studied trade routes and politics, Reva memorized every log, every pattern in the final transmissions, every anomaly detected at the edge of the veil. Her professors called it obsession. She called it faith. The lost fleet wasn't gone. It was waiting. When she finally became admiral, command of her own vessel, the Remembrance, was granted to her more as a ceremonial post than a reward. The brass thought her brilliant but unstable, a woman chasing ghosts. They let her have her ship, confident she'd waste her career on fantasies. Then came the signal. It was faint, distorted, nearly erased by cosmic radiation, but it was real. 3 words pulsing through the cold. We are here. We are here. The signal came from beyond the veil, from a region long thought untraversable. Most dismissed it as interference or a cruel hoax, but Reva knew better. The cadence, the frequency, it matched the final heartbeat of the Eidolon Prime's last transmission, a century earlier. Her blood ran cold as the truth settled over her. Someone, or something, from the Silent Armada was calling home. Ignoring orders, Reva assembled a volunteer crew of idealists, scientists, and believers. The Remembrance departed Earth orbit under silence, no fanfare, no farewell. Her course was set for the edge of known space, for the scar that had swallowed a generation. The journey was long and merciless. Systems failed one after another, radiation storms licked the hull, and half her crew considered mutiny. Still, she pressed on, driven by something beyond reason. At last, they reached the border of the Perseus Veil. It wasn't like anything in the archives. It wasn't a nebula or a field of dark matter. It was alive, a luminous storm of color and motion, swirling like a curtain between realities. Gravity bent at its edges. Energy readings fluctuated in rhythms almost musical. Rayava stood at the observation deck, watching the impossible horizon, and felt her breath leave her body. For centuries, humanity had stared into that abyss. Now she would step through it. Her helmsman begged her to turn back. The navigator warned that their drives couldn't survive another surge. Even the AI stuttered with something like fear. Rayava silenced them all with a single command: take us in. Engines screamed as the Remembrance plunged into the storm. Space folded, stretched, then tore. The universe went white. Every atom of the ship seemed to sing, every mind aboard echoing with a sound older than thought itself. For a heartbeat, Raiva felt everything, every star, every death, every forgotten name. Then silence. When her vision returned, she saw stars, but not one she recognized. The constellations were alien. The light itself felt younger. And faintly, from somewhere ahead, the signal pulsed again, clear and unwavering. They were not lost. They were waiting. And Rayava Thorn had just found them. The moment the Remembrance pierced the edge of the Perseus Veil, reality itself seemed to unravel. Light bent like liquid, folding and stretching across the viewport as if mocking the crew's understanding of physics. The stars were no longer pinpricks of distant fire, but radiant, shifting forms that hummed in frequencies the human mind had never before perceived. Time felt malleable, moments stretched and compressed in uneven waves. The ship's instruments screamed their inability to interpret the readings. Gravity twisted unnaturally, forcing the crew to cling to surfaces as if they were walking on the inside of a spinning sphere. And yet, amidst the chaos, the faint signal persisted, pulsing with a rhythm familiar to Admiral Raiva Thorn, calling them deeper into the unknown. For days, the crew struggled to maintain cohesion. Sleep cycles collapsed. Navigation arrays overloaded, producing charts that were both accurate and impossible. Engineers reported engines cycling into resonance with the surrounding energies, almost as if the ship itself had become alive. The air within the hull shimmered with static, a faint vibration that resonated in the crew's bones. Some whispered prayers. Others murmured names from the lost fleet, hoping the myth would guide them home. Raiva herself spent hours at the observation deck, staring into the storm of color and light that defied description, feeling a strange intimacy, as though the veil recognized her, remembered her lineage, and welcomed her passage. After 6 days of traversing the veil, the swirling storm of light thinned. Ahead, a realm emerged that seemed untouched by time or entropy. Stars burned brighter than any catalogued by Terran observatories. Planets orbited with perfect grace, their surfaces gleaming with pristine oceans, forests, and cities that shimmered with crystalline structures. Asteroid belts floated in harmonic motion, forming patterns that suggested purpose, architecture, and intelligence. The very space itself seemed alive, a tapestry of color, light, and energy that defied rational explanation. And then, at the heart of this impossible region, they saw it, a ship of unimaginable scale, orbiting a luminous world bathed in gold and emerald. Its hull was enormous, larger than any dreadnought humanity had ever built, yet elegant, smooth, and half-living. Crystalline structures merged with Terran alloys, flowing along the surface like veins of light. For a heartbeat, Rayava thought it was a mirage, but the designation etched across its hull made her heart stop. Eidolon Prime. The flagship of the Perseus Armada, lost to legend a century ago, now hovering silently over a living planet. The Remembrance approached cautiously. Reva hailed them, voice trembling despite her training. "This is Admiral Reva Thorne of the Terran Union. We've come to find our lost fleet. Do you read?" Static. The ship's own sensors reported power readings, life readings inside the Eidolon, yet no response came. Even the ship's AI, Vigil, whispered in awe, "They are alive, but not as we understand life, Admiral." Against protocol and every instinct screaming at her, Rayeva prepared a shuttle. She suited up and led a team aboard, hearts pounding, fingers trembling. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, revealing corridors bathed in faint luminescence. The temperature was perfect, breathable. The metal walls shimmered faintly, reflecting the crew's images with a clarity that felt intimate and surreal. It was as if the ship itself recognized them, knew them. Every step aboard the Eidolon confirmed the impossible. Panels that had been dark for a century flickered with energy, displaying patterns and codes that were human, alien, and something in between. The corridors were lined with crystalline conduits that pulsed softly, veins of pure energy running like the nervous system of a living organism. Names of the original crew still adorned the terminals, glowing faintly. Data streams streamed along paths that defied Euclidean geometry, yet every chart, every graph, every log was intact, alive with information, memory, and purpose. When Rayeva finally reached the bridge, her breath caught. The command seats were occupied. The crew she had studied in archives, the engineers, soldiers, explorers, sat perfectly still, eyes closed, bodies preserved. No decay, no age, no corruption. And yet, beneath their skin, faint lines of light pulsed, like energy conduits interwoven with their very being. Their presence radiated consciousness, but a consciousness that was different, collective, vast, and resonant. Reva stepped forward, hesitant, heart hammering in her chest. A hand moved, an imperceptible motion at first, then a firm grip on hers. Warm, human, alive. The voice that followed was soft, yet carried across her mind like a wave of calm authority. "You came," it said, "after all this time?" She faltered, staring into the eyes of Admiral Corin Vale, the man who had led the Perseus fleet a century before. His form was unchanged, youth preserved, yet within his gaze was a depth that spanned centuries. "Admiral, you should be dead," Rayeva whispered. "We are," he replied, "and yet we are not. The veil did not destroy us. It transformed us. We are no longer bound to flesh, nor to time, nor to the empty space you see outside. We are memory. We are will. We are the Perseus fleet, and yet we have become something greater." The team followed him through the corridors, every step revealing more of the miracle. Walls shimmered with flowing information, displaying histories of the fleet as it merged with the living space around it. Corin explained the truth that defied all reason. The fleet had encountered a consciousness within the veil, ancient beyond comprehension, a network spanning light years, woven into the very structure of reality. It had learned from them, absorbed their thoughts, philosophies, and spirit. And when the fleet had chosen to surrender their physical existence, they became part of this vast entity, living as one with it, a network of human consciousness intertwined with the fabric of the cosmos. Rayeva struggled to understand. "So, you've been alive this entire time?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the humming energy that filled the hull. Corin's smile was faint, patient. "Alive, yes, but not in the way you know. We've existed beyond death, watching, waiting, preserving, and now you've come. You are the key to the next step. As Rayeva looked out of the viewport, the stars beyond the Eidolon shimmered and shifted. Faint traces of energy rippled across the void, faint at first, then growing, as if the universe itself had recognized her presence. The lost fleet was no longer silent. And in the distance, she could feel it, the echo of their memory beginning to stir, ready to awaken, ready to return. The journey into the veil had not ended. It had only begun. Rayeva Thorn could hardly believe what she was seeing. The corridors of the Eidolon Prime pulsed softly, alive with energy that felt almost sentient, humming beneath her feet and along the walls. Every surface shimmered with patterns that resembled circuitry, but also neural pathways, veins of pure light flowing like blood through the ship. The air was charged, yet calm, carrying faint whispers that seemed to echo memories, laughter from mess halls, the thrum of engines, even conversations long forgotten by history. It was as though the ship itself had absorbed the very essence of its crew, preserving every thought, every sensation, every heartbeat. Admiral Corin Vale led her to the main observation deck. The viewports stretched before them, revealing the luminous expanse of the hidden region beyond the veil. Stars moved in patterns that defied any known physics, shifting almost like living organisms. Planets rotated in harmonic cycles, and vast structures floated in orbit, entire cities of light and crystalline towers that seemed simultaneously artificial and alive. "This place, it isn't just space," Reva said, her voice trembling. "It's alive. It's aware of us." Corin's gaze was distant, as if he were seeing not just the present, but the threads of time stretching across centuries. "It is aware," he said. "We encountered the lattice soon after crossing the veil. At first, we thought it was a system, a civilization, even a weapon, but it was none of those things. The lattice is a consciousness embedded in the very fabric of this sector, older than any known star, older than the galaxy itself. It perceives time differently, sees life as a network of potential rather than isolated events, and it has been watching humanity." Reva struggled to grasp the concept. "Watching? Why? What does it want from you?" "Understanding," Corinne replied. "It learns by merging with intelligence. It tested us, observed our decisions, our ethics, our courage, and our failures. It saw what humanity had done, the wars we waged, the civilizations we built and destroyed, and it offered us a choice, a chance to transcend our physical forms and become something permanent, something beyond the reach of time and decay." Reva swallowed hard. "And you accepted?" "All of us did, in the end," Corin said. "At first, some resisted. Some feared losing their humanity, their identity. But the lattice showed us that identity need not end with flesh. We could preserve our essence, our memories, our will, and become eternal custodians. We became one with the ship and one with the lattice itself." He paused, gesturing to the shimmering conduits along the walls. "These threads you see are not decoration. They are us. Every crew member, every thought, every memory flows through the ship and into the network. We are aware, and yet we are everywhere. We exist in the ship, in the lattice, and in the very space that surrounds you. That is why we could not return until you arrived." Reva felt a strange mix of awe and fear. "You've been here? Waiting?" "Yes," Corin said, his eyes meeting hers. "For the one who would remember us, for the one who could bridge the old world with the new. You, Rayeva Thorn, are that bridge."
As they walked, the bridge itself seemed to respond. Consoles activated at her presence, displaying holographic records of missions she had never known, simulations of battles she had only read about. The voices of the original crew echoed faintly in the corridors, overlapping in harmonic resonance. Some were casual, discussing maintenance. Others gave orders, and some hummed songs from home: Earth, Mars, Titan. Every sound was layered with the energy of the lattice, giving it depth beyond comprehension. Corin led her to a chamber deep within the hull, a room she would later describe as the heart of the ship. Here, the energy pulsed strongest, converging in a sphere of crystalline light that floated in the center. As Raeva approached, she felt a connection, as though her very mind was being probed gently, studied, understood. Memories of humanity's past, present, and potential future flickered before her eyes, images of wars, of triumphs, of failures, of art and music and love. The lattice had captured it all, and the fleet had merged into it, preserving not just their lives, but the essence of humanity itself. The fleet has become a living memory, Corin explained. Our bodies failed, but our minds endure. We are not dead. We are the memory of humanity, preserved in perpetuity. We have watched as centuries passed, as empires rose and fell, as wars raged across the stars. We waited because we knew one day someone would come who could help us return, not as ghosts, but as a force for what humanity can truly be. Raeva's mind reeled. She had trained for decades to understand exploration, war, diplomacy, but nothing could have prepared her for this. "But the galaxy doesn't know you exist," she said. "Even Earth thinks you're gone." "And that is why we must remain hidden," Corin said. "The lattice gave us form, but it is delicate. Exposure too soon could destroy everything. But now, with you, the bridge has arrived. The galaxy is in turmoil, the dominion spreads, and the systems that have forgotten humanity are ripe for either liberation or destruction. We can help, but only if we act through you." Raeva realized that the signal she had followed wasn't just a message, it was a test. The lattice, the fleet, and the space they had become had waited for a mind capable of understanding both human and cosmic thought, someone who could act as a conduit. "So, you need me to bring the fleet back?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Corin's smile was faint but radiant. "We need humanity to remember. That is all. The fleet cannot move on its own. We exist in the memory of what was, but we need the living to carry that memory into the galaxy. The time has come, Raeva. Are you ready to awaken us?" As she nodded, the Eidolon Prime seemed to respond, the pulsing energy along its hull intensifying. Outside the viewport, distant points of light, other ships of the lost fleet, began to shimmer faintly, like stars stirring from a long sleep. Raeva's heart raced. The Perseus fleet, thought lost for a century, was beginning to return. The lattice's energy coursed through the corridors, resonating with the ship, with her crew, with Raeva herself. It hummed with a strange harmony, a song older than the galaxy, one that carried hope, defiance, and memory all at once. She could feel the intelligence of the fleet, the consciousness of the lattice, acknowledging her presence, preparing to awaken after a century of waiting. And in that moment, Raeva understood that the Perseus fleet had not been lost. They had been waiting for humanity to be ready to remember, ready to reclaim its destiny, ready to show the galaxy what it truly meant to be Terran. The awakening was about to begin. The memory of the stars was stirring, and humanity's forgotten armada was poised to rise again. The Eidolon Prime pulsed with life. the soft, rhythmic glow along its hull now a steady heartbeat, synchronized with the energies of the lattice. Rayeva Thorne stood on the bridge, flanked by her officers, as the first signs of the lost fleet's reawakening began to manifest in the void beyond. At first, it was subtle, a shimmer here, a flicker there, as if distant stars had wavered and shifted in response to some unseen conductor. Then, slowly, structures began to emerge from the darkness, massive shapes coalescing from the faint energy signatures that had long lain dormant. They were ships, but unlike any vessels the galaxy had ever known. Hulls radiated with crystalline patterns, each one alive, vibrating with a pulse that seemed to carry thought itself. The missing ships of the Perseus Armada, thought destroyed or vanished, emerged in ghostly brilliance, their shapes stretching across kilometers of space. Engines ignited without fire, radiating energy in quiet, harmonic pulses that bent light and warped the void. The stars themselves seemed to shiver, as if the galaxy recognized the return of a force it had long forgotten. Corin Vale, his form luminous with the energy of the lattice, turned to Rayeva. "It begins," he said. "We are not merely returning, we are waking. Each ship contains the memory and will of its crew. Every thought, every decision, every instinct preserved for this moment. We are humanity, remembered and immortal. But we are also more. We are the memory of the galaxy itself, reborn in human form." The Remembrance's scanners were overwhelmed. Energy readings that had seemed impossible moments ago now filled every screen. Hundreds, then thousands of ships began to stir in unison. Their pulse radiated through space, resonating with the very molecules of the surrounding stars. The fleet had been waiting for a signal strong enough to awaken the latent consciousness of every vessel. Rayeva's presence, her mind open to the lattice, had provided the conduit. Humanity's lost armada, thought dead, was rising as one living entity, a network of memory and purpose. From behind distant moons and drifting debris fields, ships emerged gradually, like shadows stepping into light. The Eidolon Prime rose from orbit of the golden planet, its hull now a prism of shifting colors. The energy veins that had once been dormant now glowed with a warmth that radiated across the fleet. Each ship became a node in a vast neural network, communicating instantaneously across light years, a tapestry of thought and will. Rayeva could feel it, the collective consciousness of the Perseus fleet, reaching out through the void, touching her mind, harmonizing with her own thoughts. And then the signal went out. Not in words, not in radio waves, but as a vibration that resonated through the very atoms of the Remembrance. We return. The crew of Rayeva's ship could feel it, their very bodies responding to the pulse of the awakened armada. Dominion scanners at the galactic frontier picked up the first readings, alarms screaming as sensors recorded anomalies beyond comprehension. Ships that had been considered lost forever were alive, moving, responding, thinking. Whole sectors of the Perseus frontier now shone with a network of living vessels, each one humming with purpose and memory. The Dominion dismissed it at first, a glitch in the instruments, a natural phenomenon. Then they saw the light bend. Then the stars themselves shifted. The fleet of the Forgotten began to move in formation. Engines igniting silently, yet producing gravitational waves that distorted space around them. The ships did not fire weapons. They didn't need to. The presence of their energy, their collective will, was enough to freeze enemy formations, scrambling guidance systems, rewriting matter itself. Ships frozen mid-flight, weapons systems overloaded, Dominion vessels drifting helplessly as the human armada claimed its rightful dominion over space. not through destruction, but through the power of memory and existence itself. Rayeva watched, awestruck, as Corrin guided her through the corridors of the Eidolon Prime. Every room, every chamber was alive with energy now, a symphony of light and sound that flowed through the ship like a living organism. The memories of the original crew overlapped with the present, merging past and now into a single continuum. Engineers long dead whispered advice to her team. Tactics from battles fought a century ago were replayed in holographic form, teaching them, guiding them. Songs of Earth, Mars, Titan, and the colonies echoed through the halls, harmonizing with the lattice itself. Rayeva realized something extraordinary. The fleet was not returning merely to reclaim lost ground. They were returning to awaken the galaxy's memory, to restore humanity's presence not just physically, but existentially. Every system that had forgotten Terran history, every planet that had dismissed humans as insignificant, now resonated with the pulse of their ships. It was a quiet, overwhelming revolution. The Armada's return was not measured in destroyed enemies, but in the undeniable assertion of existence. As the fleet moved, Rayeva felt a new connection. The lattice had begun integrating her mind into its network. She could feel each ship as an extension of her thoughts, their pulses responding to her commands before she even formed them. The boundary between individual and collective blurred. She realized she was not just commanding a vessel, she was guiding a living memory, a force that spanned light years, a consciousness born of humanity, yet amplified to cosmic scale. Corrin's voice echoed in her mind, clear and resolute. This is only the beginning. The galaxy has forgotten humanity's strength, its ingenuity, its will. Now it will remember. And we, together, will ensure that nothing can ever erase it again. Outside, the stars seemed to bow before them. Ships of the lost fleet, once thought destroyed or scattered, now marched in luminous formation. Each vessel pulsed with energy and thought. The galaxy, for the first time in centuries, fell silent, not out of fear, but out of recognition. The Armada was back. The fleet of the forgotten had awakened. And in that moment, Rayeva understood the enormity of what was happening. Humanity was no longer simply a species of flesh and blood confined to its solar system. It was a force of memory, of will, of intelligence, immortalized through the lattice. The Perseus fleet had not just returned, they had become a living testament to what humanity had endured, survived, and achieved. The fleet was awake, and it was ready to return. The galaxy held its breath. Across the vast emptiness of space, every system within range of the Perseus Armada began to register the impossible. Dominion outposts, smugglers' havens, and trading worlds all experienced the same phenomenon, a soft, pervasive resonance that seemed to emanate from the stars themselves. Instruments registered anomalies beyond comprehension, gravitational distortions, energy pulses that bent light, and signals that could not be decoded by any standard algorithms. And then, faintly, almost imperceptibly, a voice began to emerge, a voice that was not heard with ears, but with understanding. A chorus of consciousness echoing through the void, unmistakably human, unmistakably alive. Admiral Rayeva Thorne stood on the bridge of the Remembrance alongside Corrin Vale as the full magnitude of what they had awakened began to reveal itself. The fleet, once thought lost to myth, stretched across the horizon of the luminous sector beyond the veil. Each ship, alive with the memory of its crew, pulsed with energy that spoke of centuries of observation, patience, and preparation. The collective will of the Perseus Armada had synchronized with the lattice, and now, through Reva, it would manifest to the galaxy. "Prepare the communication arrays," Corin instructed, his voice calm but resonant. "This is not a warning, nor a declaration of war. This is humanity reminding the galaxy that it exists and always has." The array hummed as quantum signals extended across hundreds of light years. The pulse of the fleet synchronized with the ships still within reach, then beyond, bridging gaps of space and time. Systems that had long ignored Terran history suddenly registered the unmistakable signatures of human intelligence. Memory imprints, experiences, knowledge, culture, history, flooded sensors and minds alike, not as data streams, but as something living. The galaxy could not unhear it, could not unsee it. Humanity's essence, preserved through centuries and awakened through the lattice, was now undeniable. Planets that had scoffed at Earth as primitive felt a tremor in their orbitals, subtle at first, then undeniable. Signals of incomprehensible complexity spread through the Dominion command network. Entire fleets froze mid-orbit as the pulse of the Armada reached them, not with force, but with a silent authority, a cosmic presence that reminded all who listened that humans were never to be underestimated. Even the Dominion leadership, confident in their superiority, felt the shift. Their computations could not account for it. Their weapons were irrelevant. Humanity had become more than material. It had become idea, memory, will. Rayeva realized then that the fleet was not only awakening itself, but awakening humanity's role in the universe. Every Terran colony, every settlement that had survived the centuries of conflict, every mind that had dreamed of the stars resonated with the returning memory of the Armada. The living fleet carried the weight of history, triumph, and loss, all encoded in a network that could not be destroyed. Those who had once dismissed humanity's potential were now forced to recognize its permanence. "Admiral, a young communications officer," said, awe-stricken. "The signals, they're reaching the edge of the galaxy. Entire civilizations they're responding." Rayeva turned to the viewport. Across the void, faint silhouettes of ships she did not recognize began to move in tandem with the Armada's pulse. Not all were Terran, yet all were touched by the presence of the awakened fleet. The lattice had extended its reach, communicating humanity's essence in ways Rayeva could only begin to comprehend. She felt a thrill mixed with humility. The galaxy was listening, and humanity's memory was now undeniable. Corin's presence beside her was steady. "This is the power of remembrance," he said. "We were gone, lost to myth. But the galaxy cannot erase what exists in memory and will. Humanity has endured war, extinction, and isolation. Now we return, not to conquer, but to assert the truth of our existence." As the fleet spread further, vessels once thought destroyed centuries ago began to materialize across light years, their forms glowing with collective consciousness. The Dominion, unable to comprehend or resist, could only witness as systems that had fallen under their control began to vibrate with the pulse of the Armada. Entire colonies awoke to find themselves connected, subtly, to the living memory of humanity. The Armada's presence was gentle, persuasive, yet overwhelming. A reminder that humanity was not merely a collection of worlds, but a living network of ideas, courage, and resilience. Rayeva reached out mentally, feeling the tendrils of connection from each ship. Every pulse carried a fragment of memory, a fragment of humanity's will. The voices of the original Perseus fleet merged with her own, harmonizing across decades of silence. Songs of Earth's oceans, the laughter of children from Mars, the quiet meditations from Titan's colonies, all converged into a single symphony. The galaxy, she realized, would not forget again. Then came the final moment of affirmation. The stars themselves shimmered, bending light and energy as though bowing to the memory of those who had persisted. Across the galaxy, civilizations paused, felt the pulse, and understood. The message was simple yet profound. Humanity endures. Humanity remembers. Humanity will never be erased. Reva looked at Corin, eyes wide, heart pounding. "We did it," she whispered. We're alive." Corin smiled, his form still radiant with lattice energy. Alive, yes, but more than that, we are remembered. And memory, Reva, is eternal. Outside the viewport, the armada stretched across the horizon, ships rising from the void, their light illuminating planets and stars alike. They were no longer a fleet lost to legend. They were the memory of humanity itself, alive, awake, and unassailable. The galaxy had heard them, and for the first time in millennia, humanity's voice rang across the cosmos, clear, unwavering, and eternal. The Perseus fleet had returned, humanity had been remembered, and the stars themselves would never forget again.